Welcome to the Mindcraft Podcast. My name is Kimberly Quinn, and I am here with the amazing Merritt Minnemeyer. Merritt is a professional certified coach and the founder of Master of One Coaching. And I'll tell you, we came together through a mutual friend. And I just want to say I am so excited to have you on the Mindcraft Podcast, Merritt. Welcome.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I can already tell, I've not known Merritt very long, and I can already tell that we just hit it off like peas and carrots. And I am so stoked to hear what Merritt has to say, especially, I think, also very timely with what's going on with lots of changes in the business world, also in higher ed, just across the boards. I would love to hear what Merritt has to say about compassionate leadership. And then she mentioned to me via a message that it's not what you think. So
That's
why
right.
don't you tell us, Merritt, about what it means to be a compassionate leader?
Well, thank you for teeing me up like that. Compassionate leadership in my mind, in my practice, is not just being nice or not just having no boundaries. I think people, when we think about compassionate leadership from the old model of leadership, we think, oh, it means that we have to be super wishy-washy, or we can't have any boundaries, or we have to let people get away with stuff. That's not the case. Compassionate leadership is both compassion and leadership. It's both. So when we are compassionate leaders, we are decisive, we hold a vision, we cultivate leadership in others, we need to be executing on our plans, and we need to have, or our goals, not necessarily plans, because plans can change at the drop of a hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and we need to be able to be agile and creative and thoughtful, and also recognize that we are human, working with other humans and working at a context of humanity, which is dynamic, to say the least, can be volatile. It can be full of all kinds of changes, which people can experience as positive or negative or somewhere in between. They have different levels of weight to them depending on who is experiencing the change. The same change can be experienced on a different level of, I'll say, gravity from one perspective versus another. And so all of that has to be, to my mind, thought of when we're thinking about compassionate leadership. We have to acknowledge that we are in a context of humanity, and also be decisive and clear and hold vision and move forward and be successful.
I love that, because you kind of wrapped in the humanity piece, kind of, and they actually, you know what it's having me think of, Merritt, because I'm a professor, right? And when the student walks in the classroom day one, I say that, the whole student walks in, not just the student. Yes. However they were raised, or they grew up in a rural or an urban setting, if they had one parent or two, if they, it goes on and on and on. And that's not different in the workplace, right?
Right.
Everybody, your whole self, whether you're going through a divorce or whether you just had a baby, or whether, the whole thing. And next, so that rolls into another point I had jotted down here to ask you if you can help our listeners understand why compassionate leadership matters, in and outside of the workplace.
Well, to your point, I think historically we have compartmentalized, or been demanded to compartmentalize work and outside work, right? Work and personal. And we don't, in fact, operate that way. Wherever we go, there we are. We bring we bring our entire selves. Whole might be a different story depending on how we define whole.
Exactly.
So we have to be aware as leaders, and certainly as a teacher, right? You get this, as you said, whether a manager or a CEO or an entrepreneur who is collaborating with other partners and serving their clients and constituents, we have to be aware that we are dealing with in the entirety of a person in the context of their life. Where this gets tricky is that, again, people sometimes hear that and think, well, that means that I might bend over backwards too far, or I might get tread upon, I might get taken advantage of. And so we do have to have that line, and maybe sometimes the line is movable. Where is it that I'm going to hold the person I'm working with the leadership that I'm cultivating in the person I'm sitting across from, which is what leaders do, right? They cultivate that leadership in somebody else. How do I call them forth to be their best selves, and also honor the context in which they're living? So in teaching, for example, whether it's a college student or whether it's a little one, we have to understand that when they come through the door, they might have not had breakfast that morning. They might have something going on at home. They might have, maybe they walk in and it's winter and they don't have a winter coat because they don't have the resources to get that winter coat. Or maybe they're going through some sort of major life loss or change that we all go through. And they're just not that, they're not able to be their best selves that day. That doesn't mean they can't be their best selves in a week or two.
Right.
Right. And the semester is long, the school year is long, the relationship between a leader and a developing leader or a report to is long, at least a year or two, hopefully more than that. So it's not just in the context of you're not showing up well today.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to punish you for that. And also, if something's going on and on and on and on, we have to keep in mind the best, what's best for. Maybe it's a classroom, maybe what's best for the company that we're running or the team that we're managing or leading. Because over time, if one person is not able to show up as their best or mostly their best for long enough, it's going to drain the energy out of the community, the team, the classroom, et cetera. So we have to be able to manage that too and keep in the greater good, the whole in mind as well. It's a tricky dance that we have to run.
That's exactly, you just led me where I was leading myself, I think, Merritt, actually, because, being a leader is obviously a huge responsibility, not just for whatever results it is, whether that's, grades, whether that's sales, whether that's insurance quote, you can feel, but I wonder if you have any helpful suggestions for leaders, because there's got to be a fine line there sometimes.
Oh, it's yes. And again, the line moves, right?
Especially if it's a heartstrings situation. Let's say it involves illness or it involves a horrible divorce after 25 years. And not that there's such thing as an easy one. I don't mean to imply that, but
right. But it has
it might go on for a while. Yeah. What might you suggest to a leader who's trying to be the best leader they can be and trying to do do damage control? I should talk about the community, because it's like a body, right? If you have a toothache, your whole body's affected. So I understood that analogy.
Yes. Right.
So what would you say to leaders about how to do that effectively?
Ultimately, leadership is about relationships. It's about the relationship with the person in front of you. It's about the relationships with you and the team and between the people on the team. It's about the people who you are serving, and also the people to whom you are responsible, right? Whether it's a board or whatever else that is, parents of students or however you're delivering what you need to deliver. And so there is no one size fits all answer to that.
Right.
The key here is having a couple of things in place. Your own integrity, which involves your values, being really clear about what your values are and how you execute your daily life along the lines of your values, and being able to have presence and connection, be able to cultivate presence and connection. Presence meaning when someone needs me, whether it's for something small, task oriented, or it's, I really need Kimberly, can I please come talk to you? I have something going on. To be able to bring yourself to the moment, and actually in leadership, say, I'm going to actually draw my own line here for a moment and put my personal life to the side so that I can be present for you.
Right.
For as long as I need to be, right? It doesn't mean that I give you my phone number and you can call me at 2 a.m. necessarily, depending on the relationship. That's, probably not the case. It could be, but it's probably not unless you're best friends or whatever. But it does mean that I'm going to sit here with you and listen to what you have to say and do my best to find the best solution for both of us collaboratively. Rather than saying, here's my prescription for this solution, we're going to come up with the solution collaboratively. And then have some check-in points. Let's check in next week and see how this is going, or in 2 weeks, or, similar to what sort of the older review structure is, only that has largely been contested because it's seen as punitive. if we can actually take what's good about that process, which is a conversation about what's working and what's not, how can we improve, right? With the intention of how can we do our best together. It's all just about communication, real communication, really
Authentic.
listening, really,
right.
authentic communication, really listening to who's in front of us. That sounds simple, is not. Cultivating the skill of presence is very, very tricky, and it's a sophisticated skill set to develop, especially now when we are fraught with distractions everywhere.
Oh, yes.
And presence means that I am going to be fully in the room with you. And it could be virtual too. You could have virtual presence. But it means that even if there are distractions, that I'm going to prioritize you across this, who's sitting across from me, whether it's you singular or you plural. I'm going to give you my full attention for the time that's needed. And I'm going to commit that to you. Now, how do you do that if you're leading thousands of people or leading 30 people in a room? And the answer is a little bit at a time. You do it a little bit at a time.
I love this. I have to tell you, the universe, because I interview people in waves, Merritt, and then I kind of do the editing. That's just how I do it. And the universe puts you right after a gentleman I had last week who was talking about mindful innovation. Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. And there's some similarities here. His wasn't the exact same shtick, but I heard you say mindful, being present, bringing yourself to the actual moment, forgetting about what you're going to say or fix, just sitting with that person who's in some kind of pain, right? Some kind of maybe transition. I heard the word intention, which I love. And then and then also presence. So you had 4 really good words there that lead, no pun intended with the leadership, that lead to helping that person who's in that place that's out of alignment, probably for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
To feel heard and valued. And there isn't a human being out there, as we both know, who doesn't want to be heard, seen, and valued.
That's right.
To me, that's a dynamite leader. If you can get to that point, you scored.
Absolutely. And one of the ways in which to get to that point is to continue to cultivate one's own practice of self-leadership. And that requires skills around self-regulation. In the context that I'm trained, we talk about energy leadership. But it's another kind of framework for self-regulation. And then also leading people through their regulation. That, when our system is regulated, and what I mean by that is, for those who aren't familiar with that term, if I can be present, then I know that I'm okay. I'm not worried about assessing threats. I'm not worried about stress and anxiety. I'm able to feel safe in the moment, and so my system is not on high alert. Right? We are so conditioned in our Western culture to be on a low rumble of alert all the time.
100%.
All the time, whether or not it's necessary. And that has, in large part, to do. I mean, this is an evolutionary necessity that we have been programmed over millennia to be able to assess threat. That's a survival drive. And yet, because we are so connected now with everybody all the time,
it's a lot.
When I hear about the earthquake in Taiwan, my body goes, earthquake, and it's not even conscious. But I see the images of a guy in a pool in Taiwan where there's an earthquake happening, and my system goes, threat.
Right.
And I'm not even aware of it.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not regulated in that moment, even though I'm not in the earthquake, and it probably happened 3 weeks ago.
Right.
But to my system, it's happening now on some level. So as I'm leading other people, I need to be present in the moment so that I can be present with you.
I really like that, because when we're in limbic system mode, right, and the amygdala is all whacked out because of, it just read about the earthquake, like you said, or the dogs barking, and
right, whatever
the
it
kids
is,
forgot their lunch, and the brain doesn't know the difference between, I wasn't invited to the thing, and right?
Because I wasn't invited to the thing means that I might be ostracized, and foundationally, we can't survive if we've been cast out of a group. right? We
Totally.
have to have social connection. So I wasn't invited to the party up here means, oh, I'm sad I didn't get to go to the party. Somewhere in the amygdala goes, oh, so people.
Yeah, or I'm just defective. I'm damaged because there's something wrong
Right.
with me, right? It's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
holiday party or it's a whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and the brain, you can, I say this to students a lot. You can be sitting on the couch in your dorm with no threats at all, but you start bringing that in, and the brain's on high alert again. So I like what you're saying about that awareness, Merit, of as a leader, well, relationships in general, right? But as a
Mm-hmm.
leader, you've got that extra responsibility
Yes.
to do your best, let's say, to
It's
have,
practice. It's a practice. But
yeah, it's a skill set, right? To be as clear and present moment oriented as you can. I think I'm thinking of a catcher's mitt right now, so
yeah.
that you can catch, effectively what the employee or colleague or whomever is saying.
Right. And also, so here's where it gets really nuanced and complex with leadership. One has to have that skill set well in hand and be willing to practice and fine tune it all the time, because relationships are dynamic, and switch it into a long-term big picture vision and also be able to motivate people towards that. But when people trust you, they're more likely to listen to your big picture, because it's going to feel safer to follow you there, or going to be safer to be safer to collaborate with you to get there. But if they hear a big picture vision and they don't trust you, that indicates change, and change is scary for people. It feels uncertain. It feels unsafe. They're less likely to want to execute on that vision with you because they don't trust you. So it's this delicate matrix of skill sets that need to be complementary and constantly, okay, I'm doing this with my hands, constantly sort of attended to, carefully attended to.
Totally, because of course the opposite of trust is fear, right? So I mean,
Right.
with people, and sadly, Merritt, we both know there are leaders who motivate that way, and
Mm-hmm.
versus respect, because if you've ever had a really good leader, I know I have, and people would be willing to do anything for her because,
Yeah.
and she did have the boundaries in place and all, hence the respect, and she
Mm-hmm.
would also listen and be fully present, and I would go miles and miles and miles for her, but you
Mm-hmm.
get somebody who's a drop the hammer fear person, that'll motivate for a while because you need the paycheck, but not for long, and not
Right.
well.
And it'll burn you out too.
Yes, it'll
It'll
burn
burn
you
everybody
out.
out. It'll burn everybody out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's toxic, totally. So that's a good lead right into, for the leaders who are listening. I'm going to think our conversation here is going to relate to so many people, because whether you're a leader or you've been led or would like to be a leader, or you've got a really great leader or you've got a not so great leader,
Mm-hmm.
it all fits. So tell us maybe how can we develop our own leadership style and stick with it?
Yeah. So this goes back to that, what I mentioned before about values.
Mm-hmm.
My background leads me to assert that everyone has the potential to be everyone is in fact a leader.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you have the gold-plated, name tag. It doesn't mean you have the office. It doesn't mean you have the big salary necessarily. Yes, those people are in leadership positions. It doesn't mean they're great leaders. It just means they get paid a lot for their fancy title. And maybe they've developed enough skill sets along a certain, trajectory that lands them there. It could also be another reason entirely. We all have the ability, we all have influence in our life, whether we're aware of it or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could have shown up at this conversation today and been in a really bad mood, and so could have you, and it would be a very different conversation, right?
Right.
But you showed up and you're like, man, you're amazing, and I'm like, oh, she's so much fun, and I love your glasses, right? We like had this great little connection.
Yes.
Because we both had the intention of making this a really great conversation for us and for hopefully the people that are listening. But if you're going through the line at the grocery store and they say, have a good day, and we go, right? We're like, well, gosh, that person's going to like not feel so great. They're going to be like, well, what was wrong with them? And then maybe they take that and they carry it along to, there's a concept of kicking the dog, right? Which is kind of an old story, but,
Mm-hmm.
the fable, I guess, or the old model is that the man goes, this is like mid 20th century, right? The man goes to work, the boss yells at the man comes home, the man yells at his wife, the wife yells at the kid yells, or kid kicks the dog, right? So that's obviously it's an old paradigm, but the point is that there's a ripple effect.
Oh yeah, for
right?
sure.
At any point in that chain, someone could have decided to shift.
Right.
The little kid didn't have to kick the dog, right? What'd the dog do? The dog's just an awesome dog, right?
Right.
But and I'm not putting the blame on the kid. My point is that we have at any moment the opportunity to shift how we be.
Break the chain, right?
Yeah. And so exactly. So and that's leadership, is influence. I can't remember where I was going with this.
No, I followed you beautifully. I followed you beautifully that there's an energy, and it's actually contagious. Negativity is contagious. So is
all energy is contagious.
So is right. So is positivity. I mean, it's kind of like the definition of karma. Now people think of karma differently, but every
karma in real time, right,
leads, from energetically speaking, each and every action results in another one, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So
I know, but you were saying about self-leadership, right? That was the question. Yeah. So and self-leadership and style, leadership style. So,
yes.
So it starts with values, and values can change over time depending on your age and stage. And that's great. That's actually okay. In fact, it's encouraged, I would think, and as you grow and develop and mm-hmm. your wisdom develops over time, you might change your values and your priorities. Along those lines, it's integral, I think, to be really clear about what those values are, because it makes it really easy to make decisions if you know what your values are. When I became a mom, my values changed into I'm putting my family first, my right. family, the family that I'm raising, right? That's my right. first. Yeah. So if I have a choice between a work conflict or a work activity and an activity with my kids, 9 out of 10 times, I'm picking the one with my kids, because right. I don't get that time back. That's my value right now. When they're out of school, that's going to change. Somebody else might have a value of when they're running their business. Right? They might say that we've lost, let's say a big corporation has had I've seen this with car manufacturers, or I think a great example is, what was it, many years ago, was it Tylenol or one of the big drug brands? Like they had some sort of, something that happened where a lot of people got sick, right? They had to.
Oh, that was Tylenol, the tampering of the.
Right. So it was a long time. Yeah. And yet they recovered, but it took a couple of years for them to recover from that. But they had to prioritize their trust. They're building their trust back with their customers, right? They had to say, okay, we got to stop on the innovation for a little bit, and we had to change our priority to build our trust back with our customers.
Right.
Until they could do that. And then they've done that. And now, right, over time, they've developed new ways of delivering the product, et cetera. For a student, it could be that I know that I need to take X amount of credits, and I know that I want to be a major of. I have a student who's a first year in college right now, so he's prioritizing. Of course, as his mother, I would like him to get straight A's, but that's not happening, and that's okay. I didn't get straight A's either, so I'm not sure why I have a double standard there. But at any rate, so he's saying I want to be a major in this area, so I'm going to prioritize getting A's in this area of study. And the other ones, I'm going to do the best I can. But if we don't get A's, that's okay. Mm-hmm. And that's the way he's prioritized it, right? But he's going to work a little harder in those other areas so that he can accomplish what he wants to accomplish long term. When he graduates, that's going to change. He's going to prioritize something else. We have so many data points. We have millions of data points that are coming through our filter every single day, right? Our brain is processing millions and millions and millions of data points every single minute.
Right.
How do we make decisions with all of that information? We have to have a filter. We have to have a place that is going to keep us on the track we want to be on. And so as leaders, whether we're leading ourselves only, or we're leading our families, we're leading our classrooms, we're leading our businesses, whatever it is, we have to have clear intentions that are grounded in values, and not just the values that like say, oh, we have a value of integrity and trust. Like, many companies have those values, but they don't really attend to them.
Yes.
They have to be real values.
Active, in motion.
Active, right.
Like a verb.
Right. Right, exactly. Like love is a verb, right?
Right.
Yes, it's practice. I come up from an arts background, and I'm a trained actor. You're never done learning how to be an actor.
Right.
You're never, if you are singing at the Met, you're never done training to be a singer. You're always practicing. So it's the same thing. As a leader, you're always practicing.
True in life in general, right? Even
yes.
we have 5 young adults too. So being a parent, we're always we're always working, hopefully, to tweak and wow, I might have I maybe could have said that differently, and then
all the time,
yes, because there are times we walk in the door from whatever, from work, we're just like a 2-year-old, hungry, angry, sick, tired. We're not our best self. And so I liked how you said that, which actually leads to the last thing here, Merritt, because I think when you brought up the mom piece, the crucial role of one's intuition in life and leadership. I'm a big fan, so I can't wait to hear what you say about this.
Oh, this is my favorite topic. So intuition is such an interesting area of study. There's so many components to it, in that we know now, we don't know to the extent of it necessarily, but we know now that intuition there's a physiological component. There is an intellectual component. There is a learned component. There is also a spiritual component, if that's something you want to practice, right? And bring in the help, and you can contextualize that in all kinds of ways. We can. Some people say go with your gut. They call that intuition. Some people talk about being led by spirit, or being led by God, or going with your heart, right? There's all these different pieces of language that we have around intuition. And the answer is it's a little bit of all of that. I think in the last, I don't know, I'm not even sure when it started, but there has been a disconnect for a long time around trusting one's instincts. And I don't mean your like base instincts. I mean, if I've lived this long, what feels like the right thing to do?
Right.
Not necessarily the most comfortable thing to do, but the thing that is going to lead me to my destination, which is defined by my values and my priorities. And oftentimes we can get in our head about that and flip and perseverate for, ad nauseum about what that might be. So I am a big proponent of getting into your body and getting your mind out of the way. So that could be through contemplative practice, meditation. It can be through taking a run or a walk, going out and what the Japanese refer to as forest bathing.
Oh, love it.
Right? Whatever it is to get your head out of the way for a little bit, cleansing your palate and letting for other information to come in. The information is stored in our body. It is also stored around us. We get too focused into what we think all the time, what we're thinking and thinking, then we can't hear the other information or see it or feel it.
Right.
Yeah. It's also about presence to an extent, right? I mean, one can, generally speaking, if you're in yourself, in your body, in your presence with somebody else, and they're across from you, and they're really in pain, if we're really present, we can feel that.
Oh, totally.
And we can acknowledge it, generally speaking, right? But if we are only half present with that person, and we're thinking about 30 other things, we might be missing out on the component of what they're trying to tell us without words. That is probably what might be the critical component of the conversation. So intuition is many, many things. And I think that that again is a practice. I also I've dug pretty deep into the intuitive practice. And so I can talk for a long time about this, but ultimately that's the way I think about it. We can call it your gut. We can call it your heart. We can call it prayer. We can call it meditation. We can call it all kinds of, we can call it creativity. You know, being in flow also can open up our intuitive channel. But ultimately, it's the getting the perseverating mind out of the way and allowing for some other input, clearing the path for some other input that might give us some insight that we would otherwise be deaf to or blind to. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love this. And I think it's also a really good way to wind up with our listeners, because you brought up nature. Again, I heard a mindful synonym there somewhere, an intention, but really, I think it comes down to, Merritt, when we are fully present as a partner, as a parent, as a leader, right? As an employee, as a best friend, it's got nowhere to go but great, because on the receiving end, I'm sure you have, and I know I have as well. When you're on the other side of that, and you actually were able to say whatever you had to say, that person jumped into your rib cage with you without judgment, actually hearing and feeling and all these things. It's so not just validating, but healing. We don't feel alone. And I don't know what role we could be in life that wouldn't be good. It's just.
It's not hard in the sense that once we have the skills developed and we practice it, we know how to do it. It doesn't take a very long time.
Right.
When we are so distracted and involved in our own stuff, it can seem like a chasm between me and somebody else, right?
Right.
Between us. It can seem like the distance is too great. So to develop those skills it takes a lot of, I'm going to go back to practice. It takes a lot of intentional practice. And once you get those skills developed, it doesn't take much time at all. You can actually flip in and out of presence pretty easily. But only if you know that you're doing it, right? If you're just trying to like put the brake, trying to pull the emergency cord off the train and stop everything, how much force it takes to stop that in your brain.
Right.
Without knowing how to do it, right? I like to think of it like rather than pulling the emergency cord on a train and like the force it takes to stop, when we're on a train and the train needs to change direction a little bit and they have the switches that just changes the tracks. But you don't change the force behind the train. It just like a little lever and then it goes this direction. And I like to think of it that way. Like, okay, I was going over here. Oh, this person needs my attention. Great. I'm over this way for a little bit. And then I'll get back and I'll switch onto this track again.
Oh, I absolutely love this, Merritt. And I'm getting all these, intuitive signals from you too, is I think often when we think of practicing or rehearsing something, we think of acting or playing the violin or football or, but I think often we can practice being honest. In fact, Aristotle, I'm a huge Aristotle fan, very paraphrased. He said something like, if we practice values like we practice the violin, we practice whatever we practice, we inevitably get better at, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Practice listening to the inner voice and intuition. Practice being mindful. Practice being present. Practice practice hearing the intuition. And being fully engaged, regulating in the conversation. It just goes all kinds of good directions. And so I hope leaders out there, leaders and maybe aspiring leaders, and maybe anyone who's, in any type of business who's sort of had some awareness about your leaders, hopefully you really gained some wisdom from the amazing Merritt Minnemeyer, who is a professional certified coach and founder of Master of One Coaching. And Merritt, it is correct that your information will be underneath.
Yes.
If they want to contact you and arrange, any kind of, further follow-up. Okay, excellent. So I'd like to give you send out some huge gratitude for choosing to spend your life minutes with us. So thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was really my privilege to be here with you.
Excellent.